Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marvel-ous Movie Mondays. As you can hear with my voice, I'm a little sick. Um, and Kelsey is
I'm just sick in a different way.
also a little sick. One is more like sinus cold stuff. One is more, I had a great night last night. Try to guess which is which.
A self-inflicted sick. Or a
um,
love sick. You
love sick.
decide.
Yeah. Speaking of, this is our Valentine's Day episode. If you haven't told by the ambiance of the room, the pink with the pink names, and I have my pink light on. I don't know if you can see
I,
the
s-
reflection.
I saw
Um,
that, Dill. I clocked that, and I do
yeah.
appreciate it.
So yeah, this remote of lights is my favorite thing. So I can make it like red, I can make it green, I can make it pink, and pink is the vibe we're going with today. Because of Valentine's Day, we're day before, so we'll call this Galentine's Day, if you will, where all the single people reminisce about all the love around them and feel icky about themselves. I hate this
Yep.
holiday. I think this is like kind of a known thing about me. I hate Valentine's Day with a burning passion. When I'm in relationships, I still hate Valentine's Day because I think in a philosophy, if you love someone, you shouldn't have to save it all for one day. And I
Mhm.
know some couples don't. They're like, no, I love every day. But there are some couples that don't. They use Valentine's Day as their excuse to show love, and then every other day they're like, oh, but we'll do something for Valentine's Day, or like, oh, we'll go out next year on Valentine's Day. It's like, no, like
Right.
every day is Valentine's Day in my world. But also
Love
just
that.
so many triggering memories, bad memories on Valentine's Day as well, that just like make me personally have a vendetta against February 14th, not just the holiday, but the day. What are your thoughts on Valentine's Day though? Because I don't want to be too pessimistic this episode, even though we're going to be talking about Marvel couples, and some of them I have thoughts about, and they're not positive. But I would
You
love to
know,
know.
Dill, my perspective and my point of view, my opinion of Valentine's Day has deeply shifted. I feel like, it starts off super fun because it's literally just a day where everyone in class passes out candy to one another. And then
Right.
like later on in like high school, it becomes like sort of like a little bit of a big deal. And when you're single, you can be really bitter on this holiday. Honestly, I could take or leave this holiday now in my young adult life. I've never had a reason to celebrate it other than
Yeah.
like with my platonic loving friendships I have in
Right.
my life. So I'm happy to like be like, hey, I love you guys a little extra today, but like I love my friends every day. So
Right. Yeah, it's just
I
such
don't
a
need
weird
Valentine's
idea
Day.
for me. Yeah, it's I get it, but it's
Do
I
you
don't
know
know.
why Valentine's Day is a thing? Because I did some research on it one
I would
day for
love to hear that. I'm sure everyone else would
okay.
too.
Well, this is me,
I'm
this is
gonna
from
mute
a few
myself while
years
I
ago.
blow my nose. I'm sorry, but I am
Okay.
listening.
Fair enough. So I did some research. I did a Valentine's Day YouTube video when I was posting on my YouTube channel, Cause Productions, and I did some little hit like research about it. And it was like this guy, his name was Saint Valentine, and basically like back in like ancient Rome, like they needed all of the single men to like go out and like fight in wars, so they couldn't be in relationships. They were like, no, you're expendable, we need you to be in the army. And but this guy was like, no, they should also deserve to be in love as well, so he would marry people secretly, so the holiday is like in his name.
Okay, cool. All right.
I think that's how I remember it.
Yeah. Cupid is the one we associate with that now. Like he doesn't even get
Yeah.
credit, Mr. Saint Valentine. Maybe his first name was Cupid. Who knows?
Could you
Cupid
imagine
Saint
getting
Valentine.
shot in the ass with an arrow and then all of a sudden you're infatuated with someone?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine it, but
Isn't
I've
that
seen it.
Cupid's whole
I mean
shtick?
I mean, I didn't know the pain of an arrow because when you're a kid, you're watching, you're like, oh, gunshots they must hurt, or like stabbing
Right.
must hurt. But like an arrow, you're like, I can just bounce off you maybe. But then you watch Shrek, and it's like you get that arrow up his butt, and I'm like, oh my god, that is pain. And so now,
Ooh.
like that is now like my least favorite way to die if I were to die. Like I'd rather.
Hmm.
I don't want to put
If
this into
if
existence.
if you were to die.
If I was to be murdered, I would prefer
Okay.
not to be murdered by
Death
bow and
by
arrow
arrow.
because
Not
I think the
not for you.
media has now convinced me that arrows are even more painful than anything else. Shrek, Hunger Games, uh,
Hmm.
what's the other one? Game of Thrones, like
Hawkeye,
Hawkeye
perhaps.
too. Yeah, but Hawkeye and arrows are kind of cool. Like you got
Yeah,
USBs and
the
all that
trick
shit. But
arrows.
yeah, so I'm like kind of like I get shot by one of those. But like the Shrek arrow, I was like, oh my god. Red flower,
Yeah,
blue
that's
thorns.
rough.
Red flower. Oh, I can't do it. That's my like tongue twister when I'm going on stage. Is donkeys red flower, blue thorns, red flower, blue thorns, or is it blue flower, red
Oh,
thorns? I don't know because that's like what they have. He has to go get when
yeah,
he's
yeah,
shot
yeah.
in the ass. I don't know. I don't know why that scene sticks in my brain. Um,
You
so
have.
we're ranking couples today. We're not gonna do news because there's really no new news. The new news is that a new movie is
Oh, I
coming out
did
on Thursday.
watch.
Oh, you did watch something. All right, Kels, tell us.
They put out the assembled episode on Wakanda Forever.
Oh, so we do have
Um,
news. Yeah, tell us.
and it was really just like a tribute to Chadwick. So I was in tears the entire time.
Yeah.
I can't tell you a single thing that I really learned about the behind the scenes just because they had so many like behind the scene footage of him on like Civil War and the first
Yeah.
Black Panther and Avengers Infinity War and so it was just like so it was an emotional roller coaster
Yeah.
watching all this like found footage of him but
Yeah. So.
so that's just it. I didn't really learn anything. I was just crying the entire time.
So Kelsey put together a list of 25 couples in the MCU, and couples with an asterisk. Like some of these are like short
Yeah.
little flings, some of these are like long-term marriages. So like we have a big range here.
Yeah.
And what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of do it like we do every ranking episode. We will start from the bottom, and then if it's in our middle 10, so there'll be 25. So it's top 10, middle 10, bottom 5. If it's in our bottom 5s, we'll talk about it then and there. If it's higher on the list in our middle 10 or top 10, we'll save it for later. And we'll get to it when we get to it because we want to talk about them in the highest regard. So if my number 10 is her number 1 or my number 20 is her number 1, we'll save it for when we talk about her number 1. Do we want to just go through the list of 25 before we even start just so they have an idea in their brains of what we're going to be
Yeah.
talking about? I'm also going
Yeah,
to put
for
it in the
sure.
description below. But Kelsey, why don't you rattle off in whatever order you sent me the order of
Okay.
shipping?
So I kind of just like went down like the movies in the phases and whatever couple
Yeah.
came to mind. That's the one I went with. So starting with Iron Man, Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. We got Peggy Carter and Steve Rogers, Thor and Jane Foster, Bruce Banner and Natasha Romanoff, Clint and Laura Barton, Bruce Banner and Betty Ross from The Incredible Hulk, because I always forget about that one.
I was gonna say you were like I was going in order, and then you're like, oh
Yeah,
wait, I
no,
forgot.
no, literally, I had to backtrack. I was like, "Oh,
Oh
right,
yeah,
that movie also
yeah.
exists."
Ed
Sorry.
Norton, Bruce, yeah.
Peter Quill and Gamora, Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter, Stephen Strange and Christine Palmer, Peter Parker and Liz Allen, T'Challa and Nakia, Wanda and Vision, Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne, Peter Parker and MJ, Ned Leeds and Betty Brant, Happy Hogan and Aunt May, May Parker,
Yeah.
Cersei and Icarus, Cersei and Dane Whitman, Gilgamesh and Thena, Druig and Makkari, Loki and Sylvie, Kamala Khan and Kamran, Jennifer Walters and Matt Murdock, and Mark Spector and Layla.
Yeah, I think you got every single one in there, every single show property, right? Like, there's not one that's missing, right?
Yeah, I
Because
really
even
didn't
stuff like
like.
Hawkeye and What If, like Hawkeye still has Clint and Laura. What If still has
Right.
Steven and Christine. So like, you're
Yeah.
hitting all the boxes, which is awesome.
I mean, I could have added Howard the Duck and Darcy from What If because they get together a little bit in
Yeah,
the What If,
yeah,
Thor was a giant frat boy episode.
yeah. There are honorable
But
mention number 1.5. Because they wouldn't be number 1, but they would not be number 2 either.
right, right.
So
Exactly.
Kelsey, I will be the bearer of bad news and give you my 25, and you let me know if this is in your top middle 10 or top 10. And if it is, I have some questions. And this is the one where before we went on air, I was like, it's weird, it's incestual, it's Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter, his lover's
Oh,
daughter.
okay.
I
That's
was
not
like,
who I thought you were gonna say.
oh, interesting. Is there more incest on this list that I'm just oh, I know what you're talking about. That's my
Only
number
one,
24.
and it's not
That's my number
really
24.
incest. It's just
Okay, but Steve and Sharon is my 25. Is that in your bottom 5?
Steve and Sharon are my 24.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about them now. I mean, there's not really much else to say except for the fact that it's icky. It's
It's
icky.
weird.
Don't they hook up
Um,
after her mom's funeral, or is it her mom or her aunt
her,
or?
her aunt, Margaret Carter, Peggy is her aunt. So I think her great aunt, maybe
That's
even.
even greater and grosser. Like, that is
Um,
gross. Like, you literally are frozen in time, and the one person in the world that you find
yeah,
any sort of sexual chemistry with is
is
your
a
your
family member.
your woman's family member. Like, that to me is so gross. But I
Yeah,
get it. I get it. But like, also because the MCU has made Sharon to be more unlikable as more projects have gone on. I'm not doing it.
yeah.
20.
Yeah, and this one's like really brief. So like I had my 5 category system like I normally do when we do these rankings. So I think that I had like, do they like each other? Like, is it very apparent that they like, get cutesy and like coupley on screen? Do they have this awe factor whenever I see them, I just go, aw. How long did they last? Did they ever, if they, if their relationships arc is like throughout a few movies or literally just one scene like this one is, um uh if they ever really stood a chance, like did we go into this relationship pretty much knowing that it was going to be doomed, or like did we actually have some hope for them?
Mm,
And I forget what, and I think my last one was how invested I am in them as a couple.
right.
um but yeah, they're at the bottom just
Yeah.
because it's weird, and they only have that, they share that one kiss and then they never talk about it ever again.
Yeah.
So
All right, Kels. Hit me with your 25. What's your 25?
my 25 was a couple that, like I said before, I completely forgot about. So automatically I knew they were going to be my 25, and that was Bruce Banner and Betty Ross from The Incredible Hulk.
That is in my top. That's in my middle 10. Like, I for reasons, but like it's
Okay.
low. We could talk about it now. It's my 19. Do you want to just talk about it now since we're
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right,
That
my
sounds
19,
good.
you're 25. Since I'm a little more positive on it, I'll just say with the way I did it, I did mine a bit more in like a tier fashion. I told you beforehand, like I have my
Hmm.
worships, like the ones I worship, the ships I worship at the
Yeah.
top, and then I have the love them, the need more time with them, but I still love them tier, and then like them tier, and then just a crush. Like I don't think it's anything super romantic, but like it's a crush. And then
Hmm.
like my bottom three are like nope, absolutely no. And Bruce Banner and Betty Ross was above the nope tier and above
Mm.
the just a crush tier. I think if I had put the just a crushes a little higher, it could have ended up lower because I think realistically, I don't like them as much as I love some of the crushes. But there were three that I was like, I just don't see them as a relationship. And this one is at least a relationship. It at least has some like narrative. I thought a lot about the narrative and how it affects the overall story too, and I think it makes an interesting dynamic, especially since
Sure.
Thunderbolt Ross is still a pretty prominent character. So I had them in 19, but like not much higher. They're the bottom of my like them tier. Like I like them,
Sure.
but like I'm not passionate about them at all.
That's really fair. I'm happy that you actually gave them like a fighting chance, because I was just like, oh, I never watched that movie. Automatically bottom of the list.
I was gonna say that's gonna cost you a trivia match someday. Just saying.
Listen, I went back. You didn't ask any in the championship match. You didn't ask any questions about
Oh,
on
they
the
were
Incredible
on. They were
Hulk.
on there. You just didn't spin that wheel.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah. No, they're there.
Good.
Just be
Just
mindful.
hidden.
You can't
All
forget
right.
about the Incredible Hulk.
I
But
I
why
won't.
they're just your least favorite because you forgot about them. You're just like,
Yeah.
eh. Okay, cool. All right. So
You're
moving on,
23?
20, my 24, which
Oh.
I alluded to
Oh yeah.
earlier, is like
Oh.
the kind of incest, but not really incest because it's like himself. It's Loki and Sylvie. This is my like. I like the fact that. Oh well. First, tell me if they're in your bottom five or not.
They're not my bottom 5.
Are they in your? I don't even want to know where they are. Okay, so we'll save them for later. I'll
We're gonna
explain
have to
later
say.
why. I'll
Okay,
explain
you
why,
go ahead.
and that's kind of like the antithesis of my whole like I'm thinking about the story because for the story it makes sense, but just like the mechanics of it, I don't know. But what is your 24? You said with Steve and Sharon. So my 23 is the last of my nope tier. The last of my like not a fan. I hate it. I hate to say it, but I just never bought them, and it is Happy Hogan and May Parker.
Aw, Happy Hogan, and where do I have them? They're in my bottom 10,
All right, but
I
we'll save
think.
them if they're in your middle 10. If they're in your bottom five,
They're
are they
not
in
my
your bottom?
bottom 5.
All right, we'll save them for later then. All right, who's your
Okay.
number 23?
My number 23 is Peter Parker and Liz.
Oh, okay, that is much higher on my list. We'll save it for
Oh,
later.
okay. We're gonna save
Yep.
them for later.
I love this.
22,
We
Dale?
all have our hot takes. 22. Now we're in my
Well,
tier
we
of
both
just
had, like, completely different systems of
right.
going about this, so this is
We're
gonna be really interesting.
my number 22. This is the beginning of my like just a crush tier, and this was the one where I was like, there are a couple, um, because like I get it, I love them, but I just
Yeah.
never got a romantic vibe. So 22 is Gilgamesh and Thena.
That is crazy because I said when was typing out all the couples and I was making my list and doing my ranking, I was talking with my roommate James and I was like, "Oh yeah, like these are the people that I'm ranking right now, Gilgamesh and Thena from Eternals." And he was like, "They're a couple? I thought that they just like were like friends." And I was like, "But they live together in Australia and she cries over his death and like I thought
Yeah,
that they were like totally involved."
I would. Well, are they in your bottom five? Or are they higher up?
No, they're high on
Okay,
my
so we'll talk
list.
about them later. We'll talk about them later. But I have reasons, and it again, it's like my just a crush phase. I feel like it's one of those he's more into her than she's into him. But we'll see. We'll get there in a sec.
Okay.
Um, you're 22. What is it?
My 22 is Clint and Laura Barton.
Oh my god, yeah. No, we're saving that for later. Kels, this is so fun. I
Oh
love
my
this.
god, this is crazy.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay. What is my 21? This is also just a crush because I was never convinced that this was really romantic. I felt like it was one of those will they, won't they, and they never committed to it. And I hate to say because I love them both, but Bruce Banner and Natasha Romanoff are my 21.
Hmm. Bruce and Nat are in my middle 10.
All right, we could talk about them now since we're now at the 20. What number is it for you?
They are my number 13.
Oh, okay. So a lot higher than I had them. Why do you like them so much?
Um,
Well, I
I
know why you
think
like them, but them together, I
yeah.
mean.
Um, I think that there's like I just like, I don't know. I love like almost like a forbidden love trope. Like there's so much
Mhm.
like tension between them. I know people have their qualms with Age of Ultron and their relationship being forced or whatever is one of them, but I just think that there's like such this good like tension of like they both want each other but they know that they really can't be together because he's the Hulk and whatever. And I don't know, I think that had Age of Ultron been a better movie and ended differently, I could have seen like Bruce and Nat like really becoming a thing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is they never fully become a thing. That's why I'm still
Right.
in my just a crush tier because I do
Right.
think they like each other. I think there's romantic steam there,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
also think I think for the story it works really well in the fact, and that's why I put it higher than even Gilgamesh and Thena because like I think the feelings are there. It's just I don't think the movie ever follows through with it, and it's kind of tragic. But I think because of that, I put them lower, and just because I don't think it's weird because I think they both deserve love and it makes sense in the story. But I also think it's one of those things where I still think a lot of it is just based on mutual respect and just like needing someone more so than like it's because it's them. Like I feel like it's almost circumstantial where it's like she's the only one who knows how to like calm him down essentially from hulking out and there's a bond over that. But
Yeah.
I never really got the sense that they were endgame, no pun intended. Um even because like even in Endgame they could have gone further to give Bruce a moment when Natasha died, and I feel like they didn't. They kind of give everyone the same moment, and I would have
Right.
loved to see maybe a little bit more.
Right.
Like I
That's
almost feel
true.
like they shortchanged that romance. Even in Ragnarok, we see glimpses of him like reflecting on it, but like
Mhm.
I think if they really were to follow through with it, even if it was a breakup, like follow through with the story, it would have been higher on my list. But I think they just don't follow through. I think they listen to the fans and were like, "Oh, the fans don't like this. We're gonna stop it in its tracks."
I
So
see.
I put it at 21. They're just a crush right now, but like if they were to commit, I would have put them higher.
They were really high on my awe factor. I don't know why, but I just thought that these were 2 characters that both deserved, like, a little happiness.
Mhm.
Like, I think doesn't Steve say something to them? Like, "You both deserve a win," or something?
Yeah, yeah,
And, like, that's exactly how I felt. Like, they deserve a little, thing to themselves to, like,
right.
make them happy.
All right, so Kelsey, what is your number 21?
My number 21 is Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne.
All right, that's a little higher for me. It's 15, so we'll talk about it now. Again, this is in my like them tier because I think they are a substantial couple. It's just like we don't get a lot of time with them, and I
Right.
like them, but I think the other Ant Man and Wasp is a little stronger, a little stronger. And you'll see what I
Mm.
mean. But Yeah, I
Yeah.
like them. They're like just like a solid old couple, but they are supporting couples, so it's hard to like crack into that upper echelon for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just not as invested as them. Like they're on really solid ground. They've been married for years. Like we just, got Michelle Pfeiffer back. Like we saved her from the quantum realm. And they just seem like they're in a really good solid place. So there's no room for drama with these
Right.
two, which like makes them lower on my list.
Right. You almost want a little bit more meat to that story. All
Yeah.
right. My number 20 might be controversial, but it's still in the just a crush phase because I still don't think it's a relationship yet. But it is a one night stand. They did actually get that far. And it is Jen Walters and Matt Murdock. And it's
Oh
strictly because of how I'm
my
ranking these.
god.
What? What?
Yeah.
What is it for you?
I'm just
Higher?
shocked.
Top 10 or
Mine
is it
is
still
mine is higher.
is it top 10 though?
Yeah, it's top 10.
Okay, so we'll save it for later. And again, it's my system the way I'm going about it, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'll explain later. Who is your number 20?
My number 20 is Ned Leeds and Betty Brant.
I was shocked that this ended up so high on my list. It's only number 12. It's 12, but
Okay.
it's higher. I would love to hear your reasonings for Ned and Betty Brant.
Listen, I think that they're very cute. I think that this is a really funny moment in this movie. I quite enjoy it. I was honestly kind of disappointed when they decided to like break up. Like I know that that was also part of the bit, but I think that they really could have been like something really really cute together.
Yeah, I
Um
I love how this movie specifically just like leans into awkward teenage romance, even
yeah.
more so than I think Peter's two relationships do. I think Peter's two relationships are stronger relationships, which is why they're higher on
Yeah.
my list. But I think Ned and Betty kind of epitomize that tone they're trying to go for in that
Yeah.
movie. The only reason, and I put them, so what happens is I put the like thems and then I put the love thems higher than the like thems. And then for the middle, I was like, I need more time, but I do love them. And I do
Yeah.
need more time with Ned and Betty, but I do love
Yeah.
them. So they're above the like them tier. Like they're my
Right.
number 12 because I think they're still like I'm much more a fan of them together than I am all my ones in the middle tier here.
Sure.
Yeah, I just really like them together. I wish they explored more, but they are in a relationship. That movie, they are each other's boyfriend and girlfriend, so it counts,
Yeah.
and I love it. And I think it's a great comedic relief for a story that is already pretty light, but gets a little heavier. And I think they're consistent, and they kind of give it that vibe of like this is your teenage comedy road trip movie. They're going around Europe. Like I think they fit that
Yeah.
tone so well. So I'm a big fan.
And Angourie Rice and Jacob Batalon just like kill all those
Yeah,
moments together.
yeah, they're
They have
really good.
such a good chemistry between the two of them. There's a really
Yeah.
good give and take there.
So good. All right. Who is your number? My 19, as I said, was Bruce Banner and Betty Ross. Who
Mm.
is your number 19?
My number 19 is Stephen Strange and Christine Palmer.
That's in my top 10, and we're gonna get to it later.
I figured you asked me, you were like, quick question, are we including what if in this? And I was like,
And that
yeah,
is
sure.
exactly why it's in my top 10. We'll get there.
Yeah.
My number 18 is I don't know if this is controversial or not. Cersei and Icarus is my 18.
Cersei and Icarus are my 14.
All right, let's talk about them now then. This one I like. I love the passion in this romance. I mean,
Hmm.
it's Marvel's only sex scene until Jen and Matt, but even then, I don't
Right.
think you see Jen and Matt's. You see this sex scene, and I think that's why a
Hmm.
lot of people like. That's why it has a lower rating, is because a lot of people are like, "Ew, sex in the Marvel." I'm like, get out, they're adults. I mean, like
Yeah.
they're gonna
They're
and they're
all consenting
gods.
adults.
If I had the body of a god, yeah. So like
I'd
I
be
get it.
constantly fucking.
Um, the only reason I put him a little lower is because he ends up being this villain and like not a
Right.
villain, but like kind of like I mean, essentially a villain, not the antagonist of the story, but a antagonist. And I do
Yeah.
think I just prefer her in the other romance better. I think she has a
Yeah.
better, she
Okay.
just meshes better with the other one. But I still think that they have like the actual steam, the actual romance, the passion. But I don't think their arc concludes as successfully as the other one, which I think has room to flourish even more. Where like I think their story here is done. I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Dill, this was kind of complicated to rank for me because one of my categories was how long did they last? And they were married for like 5,000 years, I think. So I was
Right.
like, well, they last a really long time, but we
True.
don't see a lot of them in the movie lasting. So I was like,
Right.
how do I score this?
Right.
I mean, you know me. I love some good drama. And I think that this is like a really passionate, like you said, like, there's a clear love and admiration for one another in this relationship. And it's just a shame that they, just ended up disagreeing about what they should do about the celestial and earth and everything. But I think that, it almost makes it kind of steamier, I think, that they're like clashing heads now.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
honestly, I'm like, I ranked her other relationship in this movie a little bit higher than this one, and I'm like, why did I do that? Because I feel like even Cersei gives the vibe in this movie that she's like more attracted to Icarus than
Oh
she
yeah.
is Dane Whitman. Like, I know Dane Whitman's like the good guy, the nice boyfriend that's
I
going to
think
be
that's
supportive
why.
and there for her.
I think that's
But
why
I'm
we both
like,
ranked them higher, is because the audience
Icarus is the
sees the
bad
two.
boy.
Right. I think that's the thing though, is we're always gonna root for like the kind of good one rather than the kind of
Sure.
spicy one. It's why everyone, I'm not gonna say where it is on my list, but it's why a lot of people, myself included, liked Kamala Khan and Kamran better than they did Bruno, because Kamran was just a sweet guy, not
Yeah.
really a lot of problems, obviously family problems, but he was a nice guy, whereas Bruno was the one who was a little salty, a little spicier. And I think it's the same
Sure.
thing here, where Dane is the good guy and Icarus is kind of like the bad boy. It's like the Edward Jacob thing. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm always Team Edward. Sorry. All right, Kels, what is your number 18?
Can't believe you just dropped that you're Team Edward on me. We're just gonna gloss over it, but
We're gonna
okay.
gloss over the. You know what? Next on Saturday, a week from when we're recording this, is my subathon, my 24-hour subathon, and Matt and I are doing all 5 Twilight movies for Frame Rec. So we will be live talking about Twilight.
Wow.
Kelsey, you can pop in that chat. We could even bring you on to talk about it if you have a hot stance against Edward. But I am always Team Edward. I don't know why
Okay.
people are Team Jacob. I don't understand it. I don't.
Okay. Well, we'll talk on the subathon. If you've never had more of a reason to check out the subathon, it is for now to watch me and Dylan over why you should clearly be Team Jacob. But that's fine.
Oh my god.
My number 18 we're on.
Yeah.
It's Happy and Aunt May.
Okay. That was my 23. So, tell us why Happy and Aunt May. Well, I guess they're not so high, but why all the way up at 18?
Well, I like them for the same reasons that I like Ned and Betty. Like, it's very like, it's for the comedy. It's like, very, it's like a bit, and I like that it's like Aunt May, Marissa Tomei, like God love John Favreau, but she is out of his league. And I kind of
That's
like
why
this,
I
like,
ranked them lower.
but I think that that's like the bit, like that's the dynamic between them. Like, and Happy deserves like a hot wife. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah,
Like, he's a good dude. Like, he's stood by Tony Stark all these years.
he
Like,
does,
he,
but when they're together, I just feel like he's so like lame. I don't know why. Like
mm,
like I wish they'd
well,
given him like a
yeah,
really juicy scene for like when she died, like to really like
mm,
agonize over it, and I would have been like, oh, Happy. But they don't really do that. They kind of just give it to Peter, and then at the end there's like a scene of the grave, but it's more for
yeah,
Peter than it is for
yeah,
Happy. And I would have like maybe one scene where the two of them are like actually like in love, because it's just kind of like a simple like fling. It almost feels just like a fling, because the movie doesn't show us any of the real reason we should like fully invest in their relationship, other than, oh, we're gonna give Aunt May someone, and oh, we're gonna give Happy someone because they're single and they're adults, and why not? I don't
and
know.
I
I've just never
liked,
bought that romance.
yeah. I get it. I don't think that I don't think it was anything to like seriously buy, I think that it was really just, I don't know, like a happy thing. But like, I also like that it was like unexpected. Yes, pun intended.
Yeah.
Happy. Yeah, it was unexpected. Like, I didn't see it coming. Like, all of a sudden she was like picking up the phone and was like, "Oh, Happy's here. We're having lunch together." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just found it cute.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
liked it.
that's fair. I think it's cute, but I just, in the midst of all these other relationships, I just didn't see a reason to put them higher personally. But I see where you're
That's
coming
fair.
from, and
That's
I
really
love the
fair.
actors. I mean, Marissa Tomei. I think it's also jealousy that like Marissa Tomei couldn't be all the girlfriends in the MCU, because she is just the perfect, beautiful person.
Right.
All right, Number 17, I have Mark, Spectre, and Layla. Where do you have them? In your middle 10 or top 10?
They are in my top 10.
All right, so we'll save them for later. Who is your number 17, Kels?
My 17 is Scott and Hope.
All right, that is a little higher. That's my 14, so we'll talk about them now.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, they're higher than Hank and Janet. I had Hank and Janet at 15. I have Scott and Hope at 14. Again, like I,
Okay.
I, I think they're better in an action sequence. Like I think they play off each other better in their teamwork as like a superhero than they do romantically. Like I wish the
Yeah.
movie actually went a little deeper into the romantic side because I feel like it's all about them as a team fighting wise. But because of that, I think they're really cool. Like I think they fight. I think it's cool when you see the relationship kind of transcend to the action. We see it a little bit
Yeah.
with Pepper and Tony too in Endgame, like the kind of like back to back shooting lasers thing. It's kind of like that with
Mhm.
Ant-Man and Wasp. Like they have this really good connection. But
Yeah.
also thoughts about the actress kind of bump it down for me too. I just don't, all those reasons. Like it's hard to invest in a relationship when I'm like, I want you to be recast. So, but I love Paul Rudd. So
Yeah, I was like, I'm watching all these interviews and like the premiere now. They're like, doing all the press stuff for Ant-Man
Quantum Mania.
and
Yeah.
Quantumania right now, and I'm like, like, how did they work around the fact that she just like would not get vaccinated?
Yeah.
Anyway,
And
that's
you're
for
free
another time.
you're free to believe what you believe, but then there's a difference between believing something and then preaching it. You know what I mean? Like you can have your own
Yeah,
beliefs and keep them quiet, but the minute you start to like become preachy about it and then say that things are false, and I don't want to get into a whole tirade right now, but it's like
right.
at that point just keep your mouth shut because
Yeah,
you're playing with tricky water here. Like they recast some roles in this universe. Like they
yeah,
would do it again. They have the multiverse for that reason.
yeah.
So
Yeah, anything's possible now, really.
yeah.
Honestly, Dill, for all the reasons that you didn't love Happy and Aunt May, I kind of like I don't really buy the chemistry between these two. I agree with everything that you said. I think that they work like better as partners, as just like coworkers, colleagues, if you will. I think that their like relationship could be completely platonic and the movie doesn't change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe that's more of like on the writing and like the movie's fault because we really never see like a soft, intimate moment between the two of them.
Mhm.
We really have only ever seen them like make out that one time at the end of Ant-Man when Hank is like, "Can you please stop kissing my daughter?" And
Yeah.
like that's like all we really get like kind of romance wise between the two of them. So I'm
Mm.
just not as invested
Yeah.
in these
I
two.
don't blame you. At number 16, this is the one I just brought up earlier. I have Kamala and Kamran. They're my like them tier. Was that where you have them too?
That's my 16.
All right, perfect. Like if we look at this list, I think they're like smack dab in the middle. I think it's only
Yeah.
because I need a little bit more time with them, but I do like
Yeah.
them. I like them. I like I said earlier, I was always team Kamran. I think he has no problems. He's sweet.
Mhm.
He's nurturing.
I
It's
mean,
just
other than the
because they're
whole clandestine thing
but
and,
that's
like,
not him.
them
That's not
trying
his
to
fault.
take over the
But
universe.
that's not him, Kels.
No,
That's
I
his
know, I
mom.
know.
And I think that's why I have another couple higher up too, is because the circumstances with their families, I think that strengthens the relationships in the story because it makes their romance kind of like what you said earlier, kind of like that forbidden romance type thing. And I feel like there's a little bit
Yeah.
of that here. But the problem
Yeah.
is they're a little young, so I put them a little lower just because the stakes don't feel as high because it's a high school crush. The odds of them actually panning out are slim to none. If Peter and MJ
Yeah.
couldn't, I don't think they will. But,
Yeah. Yeah, I think we just need some more time with them. I like
mhm,
them, and it's weird, like, the show ended on, like, a little bit of a weird note where I didn't really understood where we stood with them at the end of the show. I was like, "So, are they gonna be just friends? Are we pursuing something here?" I guess we don't need to really know the answers to these questions because they are so young, they have time to figure it out. But, yeah, I like them. They're very middle of the road for me, and that's exactly where they landed on this list.
yes. So moving on now, what are we at? Number 15. I
15.
that's where I had Hope and Janet. Sorry, Hank and Janet.
Hope and Janet. Now we're getting incestual,
Oh
all
man,
right?
sorry. That's where I had Hank and Janet. Who do you have at 15?
15, I have Thor and Jane Foster.
Oh, top 10, please. Top
Okay,
10.
you got
Um,
it.
My 14 is Hope and Scott, as I said. So who is your 14?
My 14 is Cersei and Icarus.
Okay, which we already talked about. My 13, get ready for a hot take. I have
Oh
Peter
boy.
Quill and Gamora.
Peter, Quill, and Gamora are my 11.
Okay, so it's not too much of a hot take. I've said it before. That moment in Infinity War infuriates me, but I do think like that's not against the romance where he like
Oh, where
is yeah.
he shoots her and
No,
it's
no, no, no.
bubbles.
Where no, no,
Oh.
where he's like, tell me what you do with Gamora, and he ruins the whole plan because of
Oh,
Gamora with
okay,
Thanos and
okay.
all that.
Gotcha,
I'm
gotcha,
like,
gotcha.
you couldn't wait 2 minutes. Um,
Mm,
but I don't think that takes away from the romance. For me, I think their romance in that first movie, their chemistry and stuff is so good.
yeah.
I think the second movie, though, as soon as they introduce the whole dynamic with Gamora and Nebula, that is
Mhm.
instantly a more interesting relationship.
Yeah.
And I know it's not romantic, but like
100%.
I am 100% invested when I think about Gamora, I'm so much more invested in her relationship with her sister than I am with this romantic relationship with Peter by that point. And then they try so hard to make that a big part of Infinity War, and I get it, but I'm also like, I want to see more of Gamora and Nebula. And then again with like Endgame, the whole like Gamora's gone, and when they see each other again, I'm like, oh, that's cool. But I'm also like, I want to see Gamora and Nebula. Like, I just think they did a disservice in making Peter kind of the straight man of this group. He is funny, obviously, but he's the
Mhm.
least like novelty of all of them. Like he doesn't have
Right.
a shtick. Like
Yes.
Groot,
Exactly.
Rocket, Drax, Mantis. And I think because of that, once Gamora, they introduced a relationship with a much more interesting character in a familial bond. I was just so much more taken with that than I was the romance, and that's where the romance kind of dipped. I still like them together. I think their connection is great, and I can't wait to see what they do in the third one. But I think because of the sequels and everything that's happened since the first one, their relationship
Yeah.
has only gotten kind of lost in the shuffle for me. But it's
Yeah.
still at the top of my like them tier. They're the number one of my like them tier. It's like them through Bruce and Betty. It's like that group is like I like them, but they're not in my love them tier yet.
Yeah. Honestly, Dale, I agree with you. Like Guardians 1, like their relationship, the will they, won't they between them is really the driving force of that movie. Like they have some really, really great moments, dancing together,
Mm.
where she, puts the Walkman on her head and she has the great pelvic sorcery line. And I also think that yes, Nebula and Gamora is obviously the more interesting relationship in Guardians 2, but I also think that Peter and Gamora also have their fair share of sweet little moments. Like
Yeah.
they share another dance in that movie. And he's like, "What are we going to do about this unspoken thing between us?" And she's like, "What unspoken thing?" But then by the end of the movie, she's like, there is an unspoken thing between us. And I just like, it melts my heart a little bit, especially because I love a grump and a sunshine relationship. And more oftentimes, like I read a lot of books. So if you're a book girly, like this is very much tropes that happen a lot in movies, but like mainly in books. Um, but more often than not, feel like the grump is always the man and the sunshine is always like this like quirky girl. But with
Mhm.
them, it's like Gamora is the grump and Peter Quill is the sunshine. And I just
Yeah.
love that dynamic. And I love how they just balance each other out. And I
100%.
like them. I like them a
Yeah.
lot.
So my 12, this is the beginning of my I need more time with them, but I love them tier, and that is
Hmm.
as I said earlier, is Ned and Betty, Ned Leeds and
Mm.
Betty Brant. So who is your number 12?
My number 12 is Cersei and Dane Whitman.
That is my number 11. So let's talk about him now. Yeah, I said earlier why I put them higher. I think it's just because Dane is a more likable figure in that movie. I'm just more gravitated toward their relationship, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Whereas Icarus, it feels like the book is kind of closed.
Yeah.
That's the only really reason. I like her with both of them. It's just I
Yeah.
prefer this one just because I like Dane more, I think.
I think that Dane I feel like about to be really interesting. They're teasing him to be a very
Yeah.
interesting character. So I'm like, I feel like once we get into like Blade and like the next Eternals movie, um, I think that they're gonna be like this really cool, unstoppable force
Yeah.
together. But I do, it's hard because, Cersei was abducted into space at the end of Eternals and Dane Whitman's on Earth. So I'm kind of like, oh, like, do they even stand a chance to be together? Like, I don't know.
I
So
think so.
so they weren't in my top
Yeah,
10.
that's fine.
Who'd you say, where did they land for you?
11. So I was a
Oh,
spot
okay.
higher. Yeah, so we're
Cool, cool,
right around
cool.
the same point. They're in my need more time, but I love them tier. Like I do love
Gotcha.
them. It's just I need more time with them. Like you said, like
Yeah.
we haven't gotten enough of them. But I think that's why the ending of that movie is so good too. All right, your number 11, as you said, was Peter and Gamora. So we're moving on to the top 10. My number
Hmm.
10 is one that you said way earlier, and that was your number 23, and that is Peter and Liz. Peter and Liz
That's
Allen.
crazy, Dill.
Well, why don't you tell me what you don't like about them, and then I'll tell you what I love about them. Oh, she's sneezing. So I'll say what I love about them first. I I love the idea, kind of like what I said with Kamala and Kamran. I love the idea that it's almost like this forbidden romance, but the audience
Mm.
doesn't know it yet. And I love the moment, and this might be just because of Michael Keaton, but I think the relationship is so interesting because of who her dad is. I think it just creates such an interesting dynamic and layer that separates it from a lot of other movies. Like I think you have disapproving parents in some films and movies, but the fact that this is a parent who is more than just a disapproving parent, but the villain of the film. And it's a twist. I think it just makes that relationship so juicy. And I don't get the hate for Liz. I really like her as a character. I don't find any problems with her. She just seems like this really nice person. Like I don't have a problem with her. And honestly, I think Peter and her have a good initial chemistry, even more so than him and MJ do. I just think him and MJ, they've really grown on it really well. Whereas here, I
Yeah.
just think it's a really solid romance. It's tarnished by her father, but I think that's what makes it so interesting as a character piece. I
Yeah.
said I need more time, but I love them. They're in my need more time, love them tier because I do love them together. I think they have a great chemistry. It's just it was the wrong right person, wrong time type thing.
Yeah.
And I really think a lot of people because Zendaya, a lot of people are like, oh my god, MJ Peter, MJ Peter, MJ Peter, and I do like them better, but I also think. We got to give some credit to Liz because I don't think she's at fault. Just like I don't think Kamran's at fault. Like it's not her
Hmm.
fault who her dad is, and I think that makes their relationship going from a basic one to a really nuanced one. So
Yeah. Yeah, Dill, the reason why they're so low on my list is just simply because I know that she's here for a good time, not a long time. Like she's just the bridge Peter needs to get to MJ. Like we all know that Peter Parker and MJ end up together, or Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy. Like we know it's going to be one of those two. So when I was introduced to this Liz character, even like before Zendaya has her big Michelle MJ reveal at the end of the movie, I'm still like waiting around. I'm like, okay, well, like, where's the redhead MJ? You know what I mean? So I think it was inevitable. I hate when I say that word because I can't say it, but you guys know what I'm saying.
yeah,
It was unavoidable that this relationship was not going to work out. But I do agree. I think that, and I also think that Liz is just like a cool character, that she's like this, pretty popular girl, but she like cares about the debate team. Like they actually made her like really multifaceted, which was
mhm,
super cool. Um, and yeah, it was just never gonna work out for them. So that's
yeah,
why they're at the bottom of my
I
list.
feel that. All right, so that was my number 10. What is your number 10? What kicks off your top 10?
My number 10 is Tony and Pepper.
Whoa, okay.
Are we
Um,
gonna save it if it's like in our top 5 now, or are you just gonna
let's do
talk about
that. Yeah,
them?
because it's in my
Okay.
top five. I could
Okay.
see where you're coming from, but knowing what you still have on your list, I just have questions. But we'll get there. Not bad questions. I'm just curious. I'm like,
No, I
that is
know.
because that's like one of the iconic. Um,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
talk about it. Um,
Okay.
number 9 for me. This might be in your top five. This is in the last of my need more time, but I love them tier because I just need more time with them. I feel like we didn't get the full story, and it's unfortunately due to real life circumstances. But it is T'Challa and Nakia is my number 9.
That's my number 9, Dill.
Yeah, it's so terrible because they
Mhm.
have so much potential by the end of that movie, and
Mhm.
I think that first movie was setting up something bigger, and then we don't get that, and it's so sad. And
Yeah.
Infinity War, they kind of focus a little bit more on T'Challa and Okoye because it's more of that because it's a war film, like it's more
Mhm.
about the battle. And I just wish there was some room for that because I feel like we just never get the ending, which prevents me from putting it higher. But
Yeah.
like I do love them so much together, and I really was rooting for them, and it's so heartbreaking. And I think Wakanda Forever also emphasizes how good they were together because like you see that his legacy moves on through her and what she does for the world and what she
Mhm.
does with her son. But yeah, it sucks because I really want more of them, but we'll never get it. It's so sad.
Yeah, they just could have been so great. It could have been so great. They're so sweet. They have such a beautiful chemistry together on film. Um, it uh, it's just tragic.
Yeah, very tragic.
Live, laugh,
Um,
love, T'Challa and Nakia.
yes, Tequila. Um,
That's their ship name.
tequila,
Nikala.
tequila. Okay, this is moving into my love them tier. At number 8, I have your number 15, which is Thor and Jane Foster.
Mm.
I love them.
Defend Thor and Jane to me at this time, Dill.
I do love them. I love their chemistry. I love how it's kind of like what you said about the Grouch and the Grump, or the Grouch and the
The
Sunshine or whatever.
sunshine.
But it's less that, it's more of just like very kind of introverted, studious woman, and like
Mhm.
very kind of like frat guy, kind of boneheaded but stoic guy. It's like this really cool
Yeah.
dynamic. It's like
A
the big and
himbo.
small type thing. It's a very nice opposites attract relationship, even though they are both sunshine people, I think.
Yeah.
Where I docked them was the fact that whole Ragnarok, she's barely mentioned, and it doesn't
Yeah.
really seem to negatively affect the film. Like, he's fine without her. And Infinity War, which I have said is my favorite Thor film, his arc is all about Loki and, you know, his whole path into getting the new Stormbreaker. Like, it's all about him and his growth. Again, Jane is nowhere to be found. So, like, he's been able to exist without her, which is a good thing. But then Love and Thunder, I think one of the strengths to it, and I don't have many, but one of the strengths is that I think they did do a good job in kind of showing why maybe they do still belong together. Again, sadly, she's gone again, but
Right.
like, it was nice that they kind of brought it back around to it, because I feel like that was more of a Natalie Portman had to leave the MCU, so they just found a way to write her out and have him be like, oh, Jane. But then when she wanted back in, they were like, all right, let's make it that she was sick. And then like they introduced that dynamic again. And I think it works. I really do think I see the argument against them, and I'm sure you will give yours, but I do like them together when they are together. Just they're not together as much as some of the other couples, which is why they're 8. Because they're kind of the will they, won't they. But I do think when they are together, it's really strong. I mean, that whole second movie, Dark World, is all about him trying to save her, and I think that's powerful. I really like them, and I love Natalie Portman, so that might be bias. I don't know.
I think she's fantastic, and I love the character of Jane Foster. I just think that, you know, whatever was happening behind the scenes where she didn't want to be a part of the MCU, I think that it really like faulted their relationship. And I just think that there were too many like weird turns where we didn't really know where they stood, because it's like they have, you know, they meet in Thor and like whatever, and then Thor, the Dark World is like all about their relationship. They're in a pretty good place, even though they start that movie with her on a date. It was just like I never really understood where they stood, and then all of a sudden, in Age of Ultron, they're like not together, or like barely mentioned. And like you said, Dill, in Thor Ragnarok, like she's barely mentioned, barely brought up, whatever. But it's like so much happens in Thor Ragnarok, and Thor Ragnarok is such like a, you know, you either love that movie or you hate that movie, I feel. But like I didn't miss her in that movie. You know what I mean? Like I thought that.
Yeah, and that's why I bumped him down, is
So
because he's been fine without her, and I think he's strongest without her. But when they're together, I still like them together. That's the thing. Like, I don't think I think he's good with or without her. I think he's just a good character. I think they've really written him well. So,
and honestly, I thought that he had more chemistry with Valkyrie in that movie than with
fair.
Jane. So yeah, they're just lower on my list.
Yeah,
not as invested in them.
Who is your number 8?
My number 8 is Loki and Sylvie.
Oh God, okay.
If that makes me super problematic, I'm not sorry.
It doesn't. Like I said, I think it functions well in the story. Why do you have them so high though? Like, why are they a top 10 Marvel ship?
I just think it's so interesting. It's definitely a bold choice. And again, like the same reason why I liked Happy and Aunt May was that it was unexpected. Like I didn't anticipate, because like you don't really think of Loki really loving anyone except for literally himself. Another person the way he loves himself, and in a way he worked around that by just loving a different version of himself. And so ultimately he still is able to just love himself.
Yeah.
um
No, I
and
think
Loki's
I think
like a
that's great.
character that, like how I feel about Bruce and Nat, like I think that he's just a character that deserves a little nugget of happiness. And I'm just so curious as to what this does for him and what this means for Loki season 2. I think that that's the main reason why they're so high, is that I'm just like, what's going to happen next? Where are they going to go from here? Like, are they going to work it out? Is Sylvie just going to be like, no, I just needed to distract you. I don't think of you that way at all. Like, and
Yeah.
like, what is this going to do to Loki? You know? So
I agree with all that. I think it's such an interesting story device, but I preferred it when they were just this connection, when it was just this connection between two people and there was almost like this understanding between them. I think once
mhm.
they crossed the bridge and making it actually physically romantic and they had the kiss, that's where it kind of took me out of it. Because then I was like, oh, wait, that's a little weird. I think if they hadn't done the
Sure.
kiss and it was just these two people bonding, like I don't think it had to be romantic. I think there's a way to show him loving himself without it crossing that line. And I think when you
Sure.
cross that line, it becomes a little weird because it is himself. It's weird, but I think it's less weird than Steve kissing his lover's great niece.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so I get it. I love their chemistry. I love the acting. I love the characters. I love the arc it plays, but it just never really worked for me as a relationship, as a romance. So that's why I have it lower. But all your points are totally valid, and that's why I think they're such a good, interesting pair. It's just I think they're a better duo than they are romantic. But
I get you. I
yep.
get you.
Number 7, this one was a little lower on your list. It is, like I alluded to when I talked to you about it on text, Stephen Strange and Christine Palmer.
Talk to
And
me about Stephen Strange and Christine Palmer, Dill. Why do you
this
like
was
them so
this was
much?
your 19. I think if you're looking at the first Doctor Strange movie, they're easily number 22, 23, 24. Like they
Okay.
don't, nothing happens in that first movie where I'm like, oh my God, what if that one episode where he
Mm.
like goes tries to change time to get her back and the stuff with the watch and how she dies, like that to me was so beautifully done, and it really emphasized the fact that he does have a heart. Like what if he lost his heart instead of his hands? And like
Mhm. Mm.
that to me made me really love this relationship and realize what it meant to him, and I think they did it in animated form better than they did in live action. And
Mhm.
then like that would have bumped it up. But then I also think Multiverse of Madness did a good job in showing their relationship too, because you can see how even in different dimensions, you go to these different multiverses and you see how their relationship panned out in each one, and it kind of just gives a really interesting outlook on a relationship that we get in none of these other relationships. We see this relationship literally transcending time and dimension, which I think makes it a really unique relationship in the fact that we're able to see pretty much every layer to it we can, and I really like that. I think it's just really well explored, even though they aren't a good match. I don't think. I really don't think they're a good
Mhm.
match. But
Mhm.
story wise, what their relationship brings to his arc and her arc, and what it brings to What If as a series, and what it brings to Multiverse of Madness as a film, I think it's really strong. I think it has some really poetic, really nuanced moments. Do I ship them together? Not as much, but I do love them as a pair in this franchise as a story element for sure. So it kind of goes against my Loki argument because I was like, oh, I love them for their story, but I don't like their relationship. That's kind of what I'm saying here. But this one, there's a little
Yeah.
bit more romance. It's kind of like the deeply tragic Shakespearean romance of like, oh, heartbreak and all that, which I kind
Sure.
of like.
Yeah.
I like the route they take with this. It's a very unique relationship, and that's why I like it so much.
Yeah, Dill. I just have the same problems with Stephen and Christine that I have with Parker and Liz. Is that, or like, not, maybe not Parker and Liz, but like Thor and Jane. It's like it's kind of the same thing where it's like, well, now they're just in every single scenario. Like we've seen them in like 3 different projects now, like Doctor Strange
Hmm.
Multiverse of Madness, and now What If. And each one of those, like they couldn't click, like they couldn't get their shit together and just like be together. And I get it that like adds like the drama aspect that you're talking about, like the tragedy, like the,
Hmm.
because he does obviously very clearly, care for her and have romantic feelings for her. But yeah, and now they're never really gonna be together in any, like,
Right.
context, I think, because, he can't be with the one from a different multiverse from Earth 838, and the one in his universe is now married to somebody else, which I get it, like, divorces can happen, like, whatever, but I feel like it's very clear that, like, post blip, Chris, if there was ever a time for Steven and Christine to be together, it was definitely before the blip. And now post blip, it's just not ever going to happen.
Yeah,
So
it's tragic, and I think talking about it more, I might bump it down if I were to do this again. But I just think that what if episode made me really care about a relationship that I didn't have any investment in. So it's more of
yeah,
a praise of what if than it is their relationship itself. All right,
yeah, I get that.
so your number 7. What's your number 7?
My number 7 is Jennifer Walters and Matt Murdock.
All right, let's talk about them. Let's talk about good Jen and Matt. Why in your top 10, let alone above some of the heavy hitters like Pepper and Tony and Peter and Gamora and Thor and
Same. Okay, well, first of all, I just like really liked them together. I think that they have like such a good chemistry. They have such a good like back and forth whenever they're
Mm,
together. I feel like they're kind of like, oh, just a really good, like they kind of met each other's match. You know what I mean? Like it was like a
yeah,
good person that, you have like, physical chemistry for, but also like intellectual chemistry with. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And I think that the ending of that show was like truly, truly a mess. But I think what I got at least from the last episode of She-Hulk is that they were gonna try to, make some sort of relationship or situationship, if you will, work out, because at the end of the episode, like they're having like a backyard barbecue and he's meeting her whole family. So I
true.
thought that like, that they were really going to try to explore this. And like the same reason with like Loki and Sylvie, that I'm just on the edge of my seat waiting for what's going to happen next between them. That's how I feel about Jennifer Walters and Matt Murdock. I'm just like, oh my God, like, is she going to be in Daredevil 2.0? Like, what's going to happen here? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I think it's safe to say she will be. Yeah, I like them. I mean, I had them all the way at 20 only because they're in my um just a crush phase. Like I still
Sure.
don't. I'm not convinced it's a real relationship yet. I think it was
Yeah,
just
that's
like,
fair.
how do we get him into this? It's so fun, one night stand. I think that's kind of what the show is trying to be. It's like just her having her fun life and not needing to commit to something, not making anything bigger than just, hey, we're just having fun having sex. I still
Yeah.
like them together. I think they have
But
great
also,
chemistry. Yeah.
and if that's just the relationship and that's all that it is, either we're just having fun and having sex, that's also right. That's also
Yeah, no, it
correct.
is.
That's
It is.
also a
That's what I'm
valid
saying.
relationship.
But it's also not amongst the tier of ones that are like married or going through different dimensions
Sure.
or anything like
Sure,
that.
that's
So
that's fair. That's a fair
yeah.
point.
All right. Moving on to number 6. I'm bringing up one that hasn't been brought up yet, and
Do tell.
I'm shocked that we both have it so high, and I'm so glad we have it so high. It is my favorite Eternal ship. It is Druig and Makkari.
They're in my top 5.
Good, good. I wish I had the balls to do that, and I'm glad you did.
Oh, I did.
Good. All right. Who is your number 6?
My number 6 is Mark and Layla.
Okay, that was my number 17. Tell me, Kels, why do you love them so much?
Dill, I was going back and forth between in doing a Mark and Layla combination and then a Steven and Layla, because I feel
Mhm.
like those are two very different relationships. The only
That's
reason
why I
why I
had it lower.
didn't was why, like, when I counted up all the couples that I have, well, I was like, okay, well, if I'm about to end on like not a multiple of 5 or an odd number, then I'll include Steven and Layla as well. But they just happen to be like the number 20, like the 25th name I came up with. So I was
Mhm.
like, no, we're not going to do 26. Like, let's just like a nice round 25. We'll cap it out. So I'm not going to do Steven and Layla, but I have them higher. I get it. I get why you have Mark and Layla lower than maybe you'll have Steven and Layla, because I just think that Steven and Layla are so sweet together.
Mhm.
Um but at the end of the day, like Steven and Mark are the same person. So I
Right.
still had them a little bit higher, and I think that, Mark is able to learn a lot from Steven, not just how to be a better person, but also just be a better, romantic partner, be a better husband for Layla. So I kind of like that, we kind of see this like growth. Even though they start married, it's not like we have like a will they won't they, or there's anything like that. But we do start with them potentially maybe getting a divorce. But through the help of Steven, Mark is able to like get his shit together and start really being there. And um,
Yeah.
they kind of just like work their shit out. It's a very mature relationship. dealing with some real issues that we don't normally see in the MCU, and I just like them a lot. I just like them.
The reason I have them lower is because of what you said. I think Steven and Layla have such a nice connection, but Mark and Layla, they have a shitty thing going on. But they're gonna
Sure.
fix it, and I'm excited to see them fix it. Just like
Yeah.
I personally am more invested in Steven and Layla. And I know they're the same person, but that's why it's kind of a balance because I think, Mark still has a lot of figuring out to do. But I do like it. I think they have a good connection. It's just I think there are others that I like more. I think it's because I need to see more of Mark kind of getting his shit together than Steven.
Sure.
All right, my number 6, I said you're number 6. All right, my number 5, also one that hasn't been brought up yet, and we'll talk about him now. It is Peter Parker and MJ.
Okay, so Peter Parker and MJ, now that we're in our top 5, I will reveal that they are my number 2.
Okay, so let's talk about them now. You talk about them first since they're higher on your list.
Let me see the scorecard for them. Okay, so it's very clear that they like each other. They were like the only couple that I gave like solid 5 out of 5s to on my little in my category sheet here.
All right.
It's very clear that they like each other. They have this cute, like especially in Far From Home, like they have this cute little like awkward will they won't they very much high school thing going on. They do get an awe factor because I'm just I'm just invested. I'm invested in Peter Parker and MJ. I'm invested in Tom Holland and Zendaya. Like I'm just invested in all aspects of this relationship. I think yeah, it's just like a real bummer that we don't know where we're left with them now, like we don't
Mhm.
know what's going to come next for them, which is why they're not my number 1, because they were my number 1 for a second, but then one relationship I was like, no, I think I
Yeah.
see the potential in this relationship more, so they're going to be my number 1.
Yeah. So yeah, I put them at 7, I put them at 5, which
5.
again is
Okay,
still pretty high. I was looking at their total score is 7 because 5 plus 2. I've been adding them up as we go.
gotcha.
Um, I put him that high because I think it's one of the iconic ones at this point. Like
Hmm.
their ending and that goodbye where they're kissing and then he has to leave and she forgets about him. That is so heartbreaking, and it really shows in that moment how successfully they wrote this relationship. My only thing is that first movie they barely talk. And
Yeah,
the second
and
movie,
then
they're
it's
kind
like
of
all
in
of a
that awkward
sudden.
phase. I like the whole awkward phase though. I know some people don't, but I kind of like the whole like awkward figuring it out phase. I actually think the relationship is my favorite in Far From Home because it's like you get a lot of that like will they won't they kind of awkward teenage stuff that you get kind of with like Ned and Betty a little bit.
Hmm.
But my only thing is like that first movie doesn't set them up at all to where it kind of comes out of left field.
Yeah.
Um and that's really the only reason. But otherwise, I think they're really strong. I love their passion, their romance. I love the actors. I think it's one of the stronger ships for sure. They're in my top 5. They're at the very top of my love them tier. And now I'm gonna get them to my worst ships. But tell me, what is
Nice.
your number 5?
My number 5 is Peggy and Steve.
Kelsey, that is my number 1.
Oh my god, Dill,
Mhm,
that's so sweet. I can
yeah.
understand why that's your number
Mhm.
1.
Well,
I
I've
get
said
it.
it. I've said it on here. Like I think that is the overarching theme of the first 3 phases in terms of Cap's story. Like it's always to get back to Peggy. And it's something you kind of forget about a little bit in the middle, but there's always hints throughout every single film of Peggy and going back to Peggy to where when he finally has that ending in Endgame, it feels full circle. It feels like
Mhm.
that is, if you watch it in chronological order, that is the first movie you see, and Endgame is the last if you're watching the first 3 phases. And I think it's just such a great overarching arc of like meeting and having this really innocent flirtation like a lot of other films do, then having that first date and then having that tragedy strike. And
Mhm.
instead of ending like, because Peter Parker and MJ, look what happened. Peter and MJ don't know each other now, or MJ doesn't know Peter. Look at Gilgamesh and Thena. Gilgamesh is dead. Like Wanda and Vision. Vision's gone. Like there's a lot of couples where it's like their endings are so tragic, but this one, it takes a tragic ending and then has Cap go through so much growth on his own to then come back to Peggy. I just think it's such a great arc, and it's one of the most romantic things in this universe. It's my favorite part of that first movie, And it's the reason why that is my favorite Captain America movie is their bond, their relationship. I think they explore it
Yeah.
really interestingly in What If when they flip the table and she's the hero. I love what they do with it in What If. I love what they
Mhm.
do in this whole universe. Them dancing, like I know a lot of people were like, they should have just ended on Iron Man's funeral. This is Iron Man's franchise. I'm like, it's also Cap's. That's your happy
Yeah,
ending
what?
to the MCU. Like that, if it was the end after Endgame, that is your ending of the MCU, and it makes sense because that to me is like the overarching theme is like Cap doing right, but always in the back of his mind, it's always to get back to Peggy. And there's something
Mhm.
about kind of like that forbidden romance thing of like he can't find her, he can't get to her, and then he finally
Yeah.
has this opportunity, and he does. And some people complain about the fact that you don't see him go back in time, so it's like kind of like
Mm.
like they wanted to see him go back and see her, but I'm like. That's what makes it so special is you can fill in the blanks. You see them dancing and you know exactly how it went down. You don't need to see it. I think that's what makes it even more romantic is it's like they're just together. That's all that
Yeah.
matters. It's not about his journey to get to her. He went back in time and he did what he needed to do and he's with her. And that's all that matters. And it's such a beautiful ending when he's old and he's sitting there and he's like, I don't think I will. I was like, oh, I love it so much. I
No,
love
I
their
don't
relationship
think I
so,
will.
so, so, so much. Love it.
Jill, I agree with everything that you said. I get it. I love that it comes full circle at the end and they finally get their dance. My one complaint and the reason why they kind of sit right at my top 5 is because I just don't feel like we see enough of them. They meet in first Avenger and they share their kiss and they're, planning their date as he's, face planning into the ocean and then he wakes up and he's in, modern day society. And then we only hear about Peggy when she passes away in Civil War. Like, it was just like, it's just so tragic that we didn't get to see like a
Mhm.
whole second movie before he's taken out of, the 1940s to really like blossom this relationship and see where
Mhm.
it goes. And you know what is also tragic? When they go back in time in Endgame in like 1970 and they're at the Camp
Yeah.
Lehigh and watching her through the window and she has his like little picture on her desk and I'm like, "Oh,
And
baby."
that's the
So
thing though,
sweet.
is it's like they're not together a lot, but every single movie he's in, they find a way to remind you why he's doing what he's doing. It's like that
Yeah.
objective. It's like the super objective. It's like it's always there. And like
Yeah.
you see it with that moment where he's looking at the picture of him and also just when she is old and he visits her as an old woman, like they're constantly leaving reminders to remind you that she's still always in his mind. We're not seeing it, but in his mind, he's always seeing her. And I think that's something powerful. Is it's like
Yeah.
it's something that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. And I love that. All right. So that was your number 5. My number 4 is a huge jump from one of your bottom 5 picks, and that is Clint Barton and Laura Barton. I am shocked that this was not higher on your list. I love them together. I love the idea
Okay.
that they're already married when you meet them, so you don't need that brewing of a relationship. They're just a really sturdy relationship. And it's kind
Mhm.
of one of those really mature relationships too, where every movie where you see them interact, and it's a lot of the time it's over the phone. I mean, Hawkeye, he's always calling her back home, but there's just this like real maturity to their relationship. There's a clear love. And I like the mystery of like not really knowing how they got together, but knowing that she's a lot more badass than she lets on. And the idea that they have this family to where when they all fade away to dust, like the fact that she's the one who calls first, like she's the call that he gets at Avengers Campus that lets everyone know that everyone's back. And you
Right.
see her name
Right.
pop up, it's like, oh, because like that's the most well established, I think, relationship in the MCU, even more so than like Tony and Pepper at that point, because
Yeah.
they have been together for so long. They have a whole family. They are the the married couple in the MCU for me. Like they are it.
Yeah.
Um, and I just love that. I think their bond is really strong. I love when he brings them home and it's like that reveal in Avengers Age of Ultron that like he has this family. Is it Age of Ultron or Civil War? Age of Ultron, right?
Age of Ultron.
Yeah, where he's like, I have this family and this wife, and it's like, wow, like and it gives a lot more context to his whole arc, I think, too. Like
Yeah.
just this idea. And I guess I just prefer when a relationship is a little bit more behind the scenes and not too in your face, because you can still kind of feel the love in the in the subtext and the backstory still felt throughout like the other scenes when he's on his own. Like you can always feel like he's doing it for Laura, which is really important. So I
Yeah.
love this relationship. I'm shocked it's so low for you, but I also know you're not a big Clint fan, but I'm not
I
a big
mean,
Clint
it's
fan either, and I still think his
yeah.
relationship is the strongest part about his arc.
I can understand, yeah, definitely strength wise for sure. At the end of the day, like, they're just boring, and I'm not invested in them.
That's fair.
So they were low.
Yeah. And they're in my number 4. They're in the top 4. They're in my worships. Like I worship them. I love them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great, Jill. I'm
Yeah.
happy for you, really.
I'm really interested to see, like, now that I know your top 3 or top 4. Who is your number 4? Let's
My
start with
number
that.
4 is Gilgamesh and Thena.
Okay, wow. And that is my 22. So literally my 22 is your 4 and your 22 is my 4. I love that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, which means they're tied. Gilgamesh and Thena and Clint and Laura. Yeah, I like this. I want to hear what you have to say though, because you had it so high. I
Um,
kind of alluded to earlier why I think it's just a crush. I don't see a relationship or romantic thing there. So sell me on it. I'd
sure.
love to hear where the romance is in this relationship.
Well, I just think that I don't get why other people don't interpret this as like a romantic relationship. I mean, I sure did. I just think that they have such like a deep connection, and like, she has the whole mad weary thing going on, and Ajax is like, I have to wipe your memories, or like you're going to keep trying to kill us all. And Gilgamesh is like, no, like I don't want her to not be Thena. Like I still want her to like be my Thena. And then he's, takes one for the team to like live with her and take care of her, and, be there for her whenever she does have an episode. And he's like really like putting his life on the line. Like he's sacrificing himself for Thena, because like one day she could just snap and like slice him in half or something with her blade. Like he doesn't know. And I just think it's so sweet that they just like live in like, this like sweet little like almost like just like this private little like utopia together. That's the word I was looking for, where they just like they're out in the fields of Australia, and he bakes pies and makes beer with his spit. And and it's like another like grump sunshine situation, where it's like he's clearly the more like happy outgoing one,
Yeah.
and she's very reserved and like keeps to herself and is more serious. And I'm a
Yeah.
sucker for those tropes, so I'm a sucker for them. I like them, and it's tragic that,
Yeah.
and his
It is
his
tragic.
death was tragic.
I'll admit though, I just never saw the romantic side of it, but now when I rewatch it, I'll look for that because I always saw it as like just this unbreakable bond of friendship and kinship. Like I always thought of them as really good friends, like, kind of like Ned and Peter, just in a different sense. Like I don't know though. Like I'll have to rewatch it with that lens. That's the only reason I didn't put them higher. I love their bond, and if we're ranking just duos, they're way higher because I think when oh god, when he dies, like that is a heartbreaking moment between the two of them, and it's really where we
Yeah,
see the most emotion from Thena. But I just think in the midst of Eternals, there's so much more like clear cut like couples and ships there, where I'm like those two. I just never thought of them as that, but now I'm excited to
sure.
rewatch it with that in mind because I'm with James. I'm with your roommate. Like I don't see it, but I would love to
Anyway,
look at it in a different perspective.
even when he's dying, like his last words are like parting wisdom for her. Like he's like,
Right.
remember, like always remember. And she's like, oh my God, I'm always gonna remember. Like, oh, and
Yeah, I
it's
know. It's so good. Like if we're ranking duos, it's top 10 for sure. But like for
yeah,
me, for relationships, if they had just kissed, I would have been like, oh, their relationship. And I know a relationship doesn't need a kiss, but it's like if they had just kissed, then I would have been like, oh, they're a thing. And then we could have gotten like um
maybe
then
I'm
I
just
would
a
have put them.
hopeless romantic that I just saw two people together that were like looked really close, and I was like, oh my God, they're in love.
Well,
I love love.
a lot of fan theorists have said Bucky and Steve have a little bit of a romantic thing there, even though obviously Steve has Peggy. Like their bond is so strong that it almost becomes this like more than friends type thing. Like so, it makes sense. Like sometimes just friendships are at that point where it's like so unbreakable that there is real love there, and Bucky and Steve would have been high on my list. All
Sure.
right, uh, my number 3 it's in your top 3 because we haven't brought it up yet. It's the only one we haven't brought up yet, and that is Wanda and Vision is my number 3.
They're my number 3, Jill.
Wow. Oh, I just realized what your number 1 is, and I'm so ecstatic. um, um, because earlier when you were saying you're like the only reason I don't have Peter and MJ at number 1 is because like they've ended. Like I don't know if they're gonna keep going, whereas my number 1
Mm,
is, and I'm like, wait, so she doesn't have Wanda and Vision at number 1 because they're ended too. I'm like, so
mm,
what is? And then I was like, oh,
mm. Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
yeah, but Wanda and Vision, we both have it at number 3. I think it's really solid. It's a really sturdy relationship. I really
Yeah.
do love their arc. The only thing is, it's kind of like MJ and Peter, where it kind of starts very abruptly. Like I feel
Mhm.
like we needed at least maybe one film between Civil War and Infinity War, because by
Mhm.
Infinity War, they're like, there's so much stuff going on in Infinity War that I feel like the scenes with them get lost in the shuffle sometimes, to where at the end, when they're having their emotional moment, we are invested because we know that they're in a relationship, but the movie itself hasn't done enough to really establish that this is a relationship we should be like agonizing over until
Yeah.
you watch like WandaVision and you go back. Like, I wish there was a little bit more in either the beginning of Infinity War or before Infinity War to really set them up as a real, like, beautiful relationship, to where like when she has to pull that thing out of his head, it's so tragic. And it already is, but I just wanted that extra little oomph. And then, of course, what she does as a result of it, it's kind of not the best way of going about it, but I think it, like the Doctor Strange Christine thing, it's like it shows that undying love, and how far we go to the ends of the earth for the people we love. And I think that's why this is such a strong relationship and why it's so beautiful. It's because of how passionate these two are for one another, especially
Yeah.
her toward him. Um, I
Yeah.
love it. I mean, it's my top 3. Yeah.
They're just so like poetic together. They like get together and they just like Vision like speaks in riddles, but they're beautiful. And it's just so um like beautiful how there's this the strength of their connection, and like the how deep their bond goes, and like literally how this has and Infinity War is so tragic because Wanda's the only one that can like destroy the Mind Stone, and that destroys Vision, and she literally cannot deal with that, so she creates a false reality for herself. It's like I don't know. They were very close to being my number one, but at the end of the day, like I said, we're left on a huge cliffhanger with Wanda and Vision because we don't even know if either one of them are going to be back in the MCU based off of, Multiverse of Madness
Right.
and WandaVision for Vision. Like, we know the white Vision is out there, and I think we can take a pretty good guess that Wanda did not die at Mount
Yeah.
Wundagore.
Yeah.
But at the end
Uh,
of the day, like, it's a huge question mark. So we don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Elizabeth Olsen, yeah, I don't know to believe her or not, but I don't know. Yeah, my brain is telling me she's still alive, but she's saying she's not, so I'm like, I don't know. Um,
Oh, what does
Either
she
way,
know? They give them
well,
scripts that are completely redacted.
she said she's done with the MCU for a while, so even if we do see her, she's not gonna be back for a little while. But I don't know.
Sure.
Again, multiverse though, we could get another Wanda. Who knows? Which would piss off a lot of people, but
And
in
if
the
it
fact that
wasn't Elizabeth
if they
Olsen, oh my
recast,
god.
um, anyway. My number 2 is your number 2 is Peter and MJ. My number 2 is Tony and Pepper. I just think it's one of those like sturdy, like
Mm,
they're one of the foundational couples, just like Peggy and Steve are. There's really not much else to say that hasn't been said. I just think they have a really strong arc. They kind of have a little bit in the middle where they like fall out because Gwyneth Paltrow
yeah.
couldn't commit to all the movies, and then they brought her back in Homecoming, and now they're together again. That's a little weird,
Yeah.
but I think their end result and their ending is so powerful. Kind of like the Peggy and Steve thing, but it's almost more of the tragic end, which is why I put Steve and Peggy a slot higher. But I think the two of them, they're like the founding fathers. If I'm looking at like a Mount Rushmore, like they're the two that I think have to be on there because like, I mean, those are like substantial couples in the MCU and in building the MCU and building what romance is in the MCU. But what do you think about them? They were in your top 10, but they were at your number 10. Why a little lower for them?
Yeah, I just think that obviously they have some things that, they have some bumps in the road during the course of their relationship, and obviously there is like that arc, there's like that point in time between like Age of Ultron and like Civil War where like we're just like, what the fuck is Pepper up to these days? But at the end of the day, like I just think that they're just on such solid ground that at like same reason I don't like Clint and Laura, it's like they're just kind of like a little boring for me. Their relationship lacks a little luster because, you know, I will say my favorite Tony and Pepper moment is definitely in Iron Man 3,
Yeah.
where Pepper gets the extremis treatment and like is able to kind of like save herself basically after falling from the rafters there. And she has the moment where she saves Tony, and I think that like that's kind of my favorite moment between the two of them. And they're great. I like them. I like both of them. I think that they both do obviously great roles and great work in these two roles. But yeah, they're just like they just sit right at my top 10, and I'm
Cool.
comfortable with that.
So, um, this is interesting because
Yeah.
your number one is my number six, but it's a good pick. I just didn't expect it. My number
Yeah.
one is, as I said, Peggy and Steve, but your number one, tell us, Kels, what it is and why they're your favorites.
My number one MCU ship is Druig and Makkari.
I
This
fucking love it.
may
I love
be
it.
this may be influenced by recency bias because Eternals is still like so new, and I loved Eternals. You all know how much I love Eternals and how I will defend that movie till the day I die. But I just think that they set up just such an interesting, like, they're like, ooh, like they just like, it was almost like Eternals was just like a teaser trailer for like what could become of their relationship, because they only share like a few moments where like he like sees her for the first time after thousands of years and is like, oh, you miss me. And then they like, have that moment where they like touch foreheads at the end when they reunite
Mm,
after taking on Tiamat. Um and it's just so sweet, and they're both in space together, so there's so much room for them to like explore this and like really go like all in on it in the next Eternals movie. And honestly, like, they're both hot. Like, Lauren Ridloff and Barry Keoghan are like both attractive, so I'm like all immediately on board
it's
already.
funny because not many people think Barry Keoghan is attractive, but like I've heard a lot of people be like, he's like a weird kind of attractive, kind of like a Benedict
No,
Cumberbatch
it's
type.
like a Benedict Cumberbatch hot.
Yeah.
Like, it's like an ugly hot. But
Mm.
like, it's no, I think that he's so cute. I love them both. I think that they both have like such a sweet little chemistry together, and I am just so excited to see where this relationship goes, and that's why they are my number 1, because there's potential here. I'm excited.
Cool. Yeah, I mean that's it. That's our list. I love them too. I mean, you said everything about them. Like I just love the chemistry, and it's funny because it's not a flashy couple like in your face. It's very subtle. It's one of those things where you don't pick up on how much they like each other, but you get that they dig each other. And it's just a sweetness and innocence that, like, I think is nice because we haven't gotten to fully explore them. It's not like we
Mhm.
have anything to really hold against them either. And just the fact that they are kind of these like two odd, not odd, but like two outsiders essentially. Like,
Yeah.
he's a little socially awkward. She's obviously deaf, and I love that too. That like they're finding characters and just treating them like they're normal people. And I
Mhm.
love that. And like you said, like Lauren Ridloff has my heart. She's one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. I loved her in Walking Dead. I loved her in Sound of Metal. I just love her. So I'm really excited for them. But what I did is I did tally up our totals. We had some ties, but what I did for the ties is I put whoever had it higher on their list. So like, for example, if there was three things tied, if I had one of them at 5 and you had one at 7, and I went with whoever had it higher up is our
Okay.
higher one. That's how I broke some ties. But
I
this
gotcha.
is kind of our definitive list. I'm going to count down. So at number 25 with 49 points, 49 being bad, like the more
Yeah.
points, the worse.
It's
At
like golf
49,
rules here.
we've got Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter. Ugh.
That's correct. That
Yes.
is
At
right.
number 24 with 44 points, we have Bruce Banner and Betty Ross.
Saw that
At
coming.
number 23 with 41 points, we have Happy Hogan and Aunt May Parker.
Mm.
At 22 with only 36 points, we have Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne.
Okay.
At number 21 with 34 points, we have Bruce Banner and Natasha Romanoff. At
Mm.
number 20 with 33 points, we have Peter Parker and Liz Allen.
Mm.
At number 19 with 32 points, we have Kamala Khan and Kamran. At number 18, also with 32 points, but it ranked higher on one of our lists, so I put it higher, is Cersei and Icarus. At number
Mhm.
17, also with 32 points, Ned Leeds and Betty Brant. At 16, also with 32, but because it was on your list highest of all of them, it is 16. It is Loki and Sylvie.
Mm.
At number 15 with 31 points is Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne. At number 14 with 27 points, the one night stand of Jen Walters and Matt Murdock.
Interesting.
At number 13 with 26 points is Stephen Strange and Christine Palmer. At number 12 with 26 points is Gilgamesh and Athena. At number 11, also with 26 points, is Clint Barton and Laura Barton. At number 24, we have Peter Quill and Gamora with, at number 10, we have Peter Quill and Gamora with 24 points. I swapped that, my bad. At number 9, with 23 points, we have Cersei and Dane Whitman. At number 8, also with 23 points, we have Thor and Jane Foster. At number 7, also with 23 points, we have Mark Spector and Layla. At number 6, with 18 points, we have T'Challa and Nakia. And now moving on to our top 5. At number 5 with 12 points, we have Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. At number 4 with 7 points, we have Peter Parker and MJ. Also with 7 points, at number 3, we have Druig and Makkari. At number 2 with 6 points, we have Wanda and Vision. And at number 1, also with 6 points, but because it ranked higher on my list, Steve and Peggy. Steve Rogers.
Okay.
That's a good list. I mean, Steve and Peggy and WandaVision were tied, but because I had it at number 1 and the highest WandaVision was number 3, Steve and Peggy got the edge in the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Those are tied for number 1. I mean, that whole top 5, I think, goes without saying. We love them all.
Honestly, Dill, I feel really good about the list that we accumulated together.
I think so
that's
too.
like solid.
I'm going to put up a graphic and put it on the Facebook page to just see how other people weigh in, because I'm sure there's going to be some hot takes and some people being like, Druig and Makkari. But guys, watch the movie. They're so good.
You don't even get it.
I am so excited for them. Like, because the next movie, who do we see get abducted? It's Kingo, Athena, and Cersei, right?
No, it was Kingo, Cersei, and Athena, Makkari, and Druig are all on the ship together. They're on the Domo, and they meet Harry Styles together.
Kingo.
Was it maybe Sprite?
Cersei. Yes. Yes. No, Sprite's a human now. Fastos.
Yes.
So on the ship we have Druig, Makkari, and Athena. And Harry Styles, Eros, and Pip. So I think that the next Eternals movie should be centered around them. I would really like to see that, because I think that would give Druig and Makkari a little bit more chance to shine. Maybe we'll get a little bit of Athena reminiscing about her long lost lover, Gilgamesh. Very interested, though, to see how people respond with Gilgamesh and Athena, too, to see if they were on Kelsey's side of like, they're related, or they're romantic.
What are you in incest today, Dill? I'm like nervous.
No, it's because I'm doing a Valentine's Day special with my sister. That's
okay.
Right now.
Fair enough.
But we'll see how they weigh in, if they say like, oh, yep, that's romantic, or no, that's just purely friendship. We'll find out. We'll weigh in the comments. But Kelsey, where can they find you on the internet before we tease next week?
Yeah, you can find me at Kelsey A. Kilpatrick on Instagram, or on TikTok at Cause13.
Yeah, a lot of good book talk going on TikTok for Kelsey.
I read a lot.
It's making me want to read, but I know I just do not have the time. Movies are a shorter way to read. I read screenplays, because guess what? They can all be read in 2 hours. I actually have been reading a lot of the Oscar screenplays, and some of them are so good. The After Sun screenplay is so good. Also, really, really strong is the Banshees of Inisherin screenplay. I really love it. I'm just reading everything in Colin Farrell and Barry Keoghan's voices. I'm like, it's so good. You can find me Dylan_Randazzo at Twitter. You can find me Dylan Randazzo 417 at TikTok, and the Dill Pickle Movie Network. If you're listening, go check it out on YouTube, because this weekend, coming up on the 18th and 19th, is going to be our big old 24-hour subathon, where I will be live streaming for 24 straight hours, and I will be taking your comments all day. Kelsey will be on it several times. We're going to be hosting some Marvel matches. We're going to be doing live an Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania review. We're seeing it Thursday night in IMAX. We're going to review it live on air on the subathon. So we'll be able to take your comments, your questions, your criticisms, your insults. We'll be able to take them all on air live. So if you're listening, make sure to go subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can follow that along. There's going to be 2 videos, because YouTube only lets me keep 12 hours at a time. So there's going to be an AM and a PM. The Ant-Man and the Wasp review will be in the AM slot. Or the first half slot between noon and midnight. And then the second half is going to be midnight to noon. The Twilight episode of Frame Wreck will be in the second half. So got to stay up late for that one. But yeah, we got Marvel matches peppered in there. We're going to have a great episode of Picture This, where we're talking about The Godfather Part 2. We're going to be doing Recipe for Reality with Zach. We're going to just be doing some host hangouts where just hosts can come on. Other people can come on, just hang out. We'll play some games even if we want to. We'll have to find games that can be done online, maybe like Jackbox or something. But it'll be a really
Jackbox would be so fun.
Kelsey, I think we're going to have to do Jackbox on the
I
subathon.
love
We're also
Jackbox
doing an
games.
episode of Draft Day, which I'll have to talk to Kelsey if she wants to be a part of. So I'm really excited. So
Cool.
check out that subathon, please. And please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow. And this is the last time you're going to be seeing the pink because starting next week, we're going back to orange, everyone. And we are going to be talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Until then, we'll see you guys next time. Bye.